This boy was different from everyone else from a very young age. He would suddenly make sounds he couldn't control, and his body would sometimes react in ways he couldn't explain. Everyone thought he was doing it on purpose. His teachers disliked him. His classmates laughed at him. Even his own father struggled to understand him. But what nobody knew was, every single day, he was fighting a battle against his own body. Years later, the child everyone once misunderstood would become a teacher who changed countless students' lives. On his first day of school, Cohen sat quietly in the classroom, trying not to disturb anyone. He tightly bit down on his pencil, desperately trying to hold back the urges he couldn't control. He knew the moment those sounds came out, everyone's attention would turn toward him. But the harder he tried to suppress them, the stronger the reaction became. The next second, the entire classroom burst into laughter. The students thought he was strange, but the teacher didn't find it funny at all. She believed Cohen was intentionally disrupting the class. So, right in front of everyone, she called him to the front of the classroom. She criticized him harshly and forced him to apologize to his classmates. Young Cohen lowered his head, not understanding what he had done wrong. All he could do was quietly promise he would never make those sounds again. But shortly after returning to his seat, the reaction happened again. The classroom filled with laughter once more. This time, the school had lost its patience. They contacted Cohen's mother and told her they no longer knew how they could help her son. They even suggested that the family consider taking him somewhere else. Cohen cried as he tried to explain. He wasn't trying to cause trouble. He didn't want this either, but he simply couldn't control it. So no one believed him. To everyone else, he was just a child who refused to follow the rules. Determined to find the real reason, his mother took Cohen to seek professional help. But at first, the doctor couldn't identify the real problem either. The doctor believed these behaviors might simply be Cohen's way of seeking attention. Because his parents were separated, he assumed Cohen's family environment had affected him. Hearing this, his mother felt uncertain, but she didn't know what else to do. After all, even a professional believed that was the explanation. Cohen's father would occasionally visit him and his younger brother. One day, his father took the two boys to play baseball. It was one of the rare moments when Cohen truly felt happy. Because here, everyone had their own little habits. Nobody cared that he was different. Nobody looked at him strangely. The three of them played together, and Cohen felt a happiness he hadn't felt in a long time. He thought maybe his father was finally starting to understand him. But during a break, his condition appeared again. His father's expression slowly changed. He became frustrated. Then he said, "It'll be nice one day without you acting up." Those words cut deeper than Cohen expected. He stood there frozen, because his biggest fear wasn't the reactions from strangers. It was that even the people closest to him thought he was doing it on purpose. But Cohen's condition was more than just the sounds. Whenever he became nervous or stressed, his body would also make movements he couldn't control. Even after seeing all of this, his father still believed his son simply needed to control himself better. When it was time to leave, his father warmly hugged his younger brother. Cohen stood nearby, waiting hopefully. He wanted that same hug. But when his father stood up, he was ready to leave. So Cohen walked closer himself. "Just, Dad, I love you." But the only response he received was a casual pat on the head. Then his father turned around and drove away. At that moment, Cohen wasn't hurt by the condition itself. What hurt the most was feeling misunderstood by the person closest to him. But fortunately, when everyone else failed to understand him, there was still someone who never gave up on him. His mother, determined to discover the truth. His mother began searching through countless medical resources. She went through stacks of books, looking for any possible answer, until one day, she found a name she had never heard before: Tourette syndrome, a neurological condition that causes the brain to send incorrect signals, leading to involuntary movements and sounds. Finally, his mother understood. Her son wasn't trying to cause trouble, that he was simply facing a challenge that nobody else could see. She immediately shared her discovery with the doctor. This time, the doctor admitted his previous conclusion was incorrect. But then, he told her a heartbreaking truth. There was no simple way to make the condition disappear completely. Hearing this, his mother could no longer hold back her emotions, because she realized, for many years to come, her son would have to face this challenge. But what she didn't know was, years later, the very thing others saw as a weakness would become the strength that allowed Cohen to change the world. After learning the truth, Cohen's mother refused to give up. She wanted him to meet others who were facing the same challenges. So she took him to a support group. For the first time, Cohen saw people who were like him. Some people made movements they couldn't control. Others made sounds they couldn't stop. Just like him, they spent every day dealing with people's judgment. But as Cohen listened to their stories, he slowly realized something. Many of them had allowed this condition to completely control their lives. Some chose to stay at home, afraid to face the outside world. Some believed they could never have a normal future. Their words sounded like they had already defined themselves as people who needed sympathy. Watching all of this, Cohen's mother felt heartbroken. She didn't want her son to believe this was all he could become, so she took him away. Before leaving, she told Cohen, "Forget everything you saw tonight." But Cohen stopped. He looked back and said, "I don't want to forget this night," because for the first time, he truly understood what his future might look like if he chose to give up. At that moment, Cohen made a decision. He would never allow this condition to define who he was. With that belief, Cohen continued growing up. But when he returned to school, life didn't suddenly become easier. After entering middle school, he still faced laughter and judgment. From new classmates, to avoid disturbing others, he chose to sit in the back of the classroom, turning away from everyone, trying his best to stay unnoticed. He thought this would prevent him from bothering anyone. But even then, the teacher still believed he was disrupting the class. Eventually, he was sent out of the classroom, and that moment was witnessed by the principal. Cohen already knew what would happen next. He expected another lecture, another person telling him that he needed to change. He was ready to be blamed, but surprisingly, the principal didn't criticize him. Instead, he calmly asked, "What do you think school is for?" The question left Cohen speechless, because his whole life, people had always told him, "You are different, you need to change, you need to be quiet," but nobody had ever asked, "How do you see yourself?" That afternoon, the principal invited Cohen to attend the school concert. Cohen immediately refused, because he was afraid his sounds would ruin the performance, afraid everyone's attention would turn toward him again. But the principal insisted. Eventually, Cohen gathered his courage and walked into the concert hall. But just as he feared, it happened again. During the performance, his condition appeared. Twice, 3 times. Everyone in the hall heard it. Slowly, all eyes turned toward him. Cohen lowered his head. In that moment, he felt like the same child who had been laughed at for years. He just wanted it all to end. But after the performance, the principal suddenly walked onto the stage. He looked at the students and asked, "Did anyone hear some unusual sounds?" Everyone answered, "Yes." Then they all turned toward Cohen. At that moment, Cohen wanted nothing more than to disappear, because he thought he was about to become a joke again. But instead, the principal invited him onto the stage. Standing in front of everyone, Cohen was extremely nervous, because this was the first time he had chosen to explain himself in front of so many people. The principal asked, "Do you like making those sounds?" Cohen answered, "No." "Then why do you do it?" Cohen took a deep breath. "Just because I have Tourette syndrome. It's something in my brain that causes me to make sounds I can't control." The principal continued, "Then why can't you just get cured?" Cohen lowered his head. He replied, "Because there is no cure. I don't like making these sounds any more than you like hearing them." The entire room became silent, because for the first time, everyone understood. Behind the sounds that had interrupted their classrooms, there was a child who had been fighting every single day just to be accepted. The principal asked, "Then what can we do for you?" Cohen looked at everyone in the audience and said, "I just want to be treated like everybody else." Cohen slowly walked down the stage. The sounds were still there. They hadn't disappeared. But this time, nobody laughed. Nobody looked away. Instead, he was welcomed by applause. A louder and louder wave of applause. Students stood up. Teachers smiled with understanding. For the first time in his life, Cohen realized he didn't have to hide anymore. He didn't have to apologize for being different. The thing that once caused him pain didn't stop people from accepting him. Instead, it finally allowed people to truly see him. From that day forward, Cohen's life began to change. He finally understood he wasn't someone who needed to be fixed. He was simply someone who was different, and being different could never decide his future. Later, Cohen made a new decision. He wanted to become a teacher because he hoped that one day he could become someone like that principal, someone who could help children who felt rejected by the world. After deciding to become a teacher, Cohen believed that as long as he worked hard enough, his dream would eventually come true. But reality was far more difficult than he expected. After graduation, he began applying for teaching jobs. But every interview became a challenge. First, the interviewers were friendly. They looked at his resume, asked about his experience, and seemed interested in him. But the moment his condition appeared, their expressions changed. Some looked confused. Some felt uncomfortable. Some simply didn't know how to react. Cohen could only explain again and again, "This isn't something I do on purpose. It's something I can't control." Although everyone politely said, "We'll contact you," Cohen already knew the answer. Another rejection and another disappointment. After so many failures, he began to question himself. Could he really become a teacher? Seeing his son struggle, Cohen's father invited him to work at his construction site. He believed this environment might be better for Cohen. It was loud enough that nobody would notice the sounds. But his father didn't understand. Cohen wasn't looking for a place where he could hide. He was looking for a place where he could be accepted. He didn't want to prove that he could endure more pain. He wanted to prove that he had the ability to become a great teacher. Time continued to pass. Cohen submitted application after application, but most answers were still rejection. Until one day, a school finally agreed to meet with him. The principal told him there was an open position, but then asked, "Do you really think you can handle this job?" At that moment, Cohen understood this principal wasn't seeing his ability. He was only seeing his difference. So Cohen turned down the opportunity. After walking out of the school, years of frustration finally broke through. Sitting alone in his car, he remembered everything: the laughter, the rejection, the countless moments when people failed to understand him. And finally, he broke down because he was exhausted. Then his mother called. She didn't blame him. She simply said, "If you don't want to keep fighting, come home. I'll always be here for you." Hearing those words, Cohen found his strength again. because he remembered one thing. Tourette's syndrome could affect his body, but it could never control his future. So he took out a map. He marked every school he hadn't interviewed with yet. Then he started again. One rejection meant searching for the next opportunity. One difficult day meant trying again tomorrow. Finally, another opportunity appeared. Mountain View Elementary School contacted Cohen. They had heard about a young man traveling everywhere, trying to become a teacher, so they wanted to know, why was he so determined? During the interview, Cohen didn't hide anything. He told them, once, there was a principal who made me believe I could become a teacher, so I want to become that kind of educator for others. And Tourette's syndrome has been the greatest teacher of my life, because it taught me that every child may be fighting a battle nobody else can see. This time, the interview lasted more than 2 hours. It was the most meaningful conversation Cohen had ever experienced, because for the first time, people weren't focused on his condition. They were focused on his value. After several rounds of interviews, Cohen finally received the answer. The school was willing to give him a chance. At that moment, he finally achieved his dream. On his first day in the classroom, Cohen transformed the room into a warm and welcoming place. Every corner showed his dedication. He even brought a little rabbit to make the classroom feel alive. Then, wearing a captain's hat, he stood at the door, waiting for his students. Facing the children, Cohen didn't hide who he was. He wrote Tourette's syndrome on the board. Then he told them, you can ask me anything. The students became curious. Can it spread to other people? No. Does it hurt? Sometimes. Will you get better someday? Cohen smiled and answered, there isn't a way to completely remove it right now, but I've learned to accept it. It doesn't control my life. As time passed, students began to love this special teacher because Cohen never judged anyone who was different. One student in his class struggled with reading and couldn't stay focused. Other teachers believed he might not belong in the classroom, but Cohen refused to give up on him because he knew exactly what it felt like to be the child everyone wanted to leave behind. So he patiently worked with the boy. He even let him experience what living with Tourette's syndrome felt like. The student finally understood. Compared to what his teacher faced every day, his own struggles were not impossible. From that moment, he began to change. He picked up his books again and started trying. Years later, Cohen became not only an outstanding teacher, but also received the honor of Teacher of the Year. Standing on the award stage, he made those familiar sounds again. But this time, nobody looked away. Nobody felt uncomfortable because everyone understood those sounds were once his greatest obstacle, but they were also part of the journey that made him who he is today. Cohen spent many years hoping the world would accept him, but eventually he realized something. The goal was never to make everyone forget what made him different. The goal was to show the world that being different could still create something meaningful. This movie is based on the true story of Brad Cohen, and even after the events of the film, he continued inspiring others. With his own journey, he proved one thing: life doesn't stop because of challenges. What truly limits a person is not the obstacles they face, but whether they still believe in themselves. When the world tells you you can't do it, remember that might be exactly where your miracle begins.